Now, probably the most asked question for anyone at the very beginning of their journey, even aspiring entrepreneurs, is what's my thing? You're ready to take that next step, to move in a different direction, to change what you're doing now, or to start your business, but you don't have a clear idea of what it's going to be or what you want to do.
Hi there, friend, and welcome to the Design Your Happiness podcast, where we work to live, not live to work, and the financial gains and well earned free time of the lives and careers or business we've designed have taken the place of those late work nights, stressful, all too short weekends, and feelings of just getting by. I'm Rebecca Hayes, a corporate girl who recently decided to branch into entrepreneurship because what I really enjoy is helping others define their own path. And for me, that comes at the intersection of the life you want, the career or business you enjoy, and the money to make it possible. And that's where Design Your Happiness comes in. So let's work together to reclaim your finances, reimagine your life and career or business, and redesign your happiness so you have the confidence, energy, and concrete strategies to build the life of your dreams. Are you in?
Okay, so today we're talking about one of the fun parts in the early days of taking the next step in your journey, finding your thing. We're going to dive into 3 questions to help you identify what your thing is, key aspects to be on the lookout for, and ultimately, how to make a decision so you can keep moving forward. Because while this is a fun part of the journey, and I really want you to enjoy it, we don't want you spending too much time here trying to figure it all out or letting it stop you from moving forward and really getting your business going and off the ground, or whatever your next step may be. Now, probably the most asked question for anyone at the very beginning of their journey, even aspiring entrepreneurs, is what's my thing? You're ready to take that next step, to move in a different direction, to change what you're doing now, or to start your business, but you don't have a clear idea of what it's going to be or what you want to do. I actually really struggled with figuring out what I wanted my thing to be. Once I was sort of bitten by the entrepreneurial bug, which I've said before came as a bit of a shock because I started my career with those corner office dreams and still had them until recently. And so, because I didn't know what I wanted my thing to be, I tried so many different things. In just a couple of years, I had started and stopped a number of business ideas on the side of my corporate career because they weren't what I wanted to do. And it wasn't until I took the time to really get clear on what I wanted that it all sort of clicked into place. Because what I was doing was looking around at others and what they were saying was a good idea or what they had done to be successful. And so I started off in that direction every single time, only to discover it wasn't for me or it didn't fit my personality or my goals or my ambitions. And so until I took that step back to figure out for myself and what business I wanted to build, it was never going to work. This is something that I want to say up front right now to you before we dive into the questions that are going to help you figure out your thing and what's next for you. Because this is really important to understand as you're working through these questions, and it'll save you a ton of time in the long run. I can't stress this enough because we're not trying to take just any next step or build just any business. We want to take the next step that's right for each of us in this moment. Basically, you're trying to build your business or whatever your next step is, and I'm building mine or I'm taking my next step. And even if we end up in similar directions or with businesses in similar areas or doing similar things, what we ultimately build is going to look differently in the end for each of us. And for a lot of reasons, including that our experiences and perspectives are different. No one has lived your life. No one can bring your insights, no one can serve others in exactly the same way as you do. And that's a good thing. If ever there was a time to stand out, it's now, when you're deciding what's next for you and building your business. And even if it's not clear yet what that business or next step is, that's totally okay. But I want you to understand from the beginning that your business or your next step is uniquely yours, and it absolutely can and should be. By the same idea, whatever you choose to be your next step will also be unique to you, as it should be. So take the time to really work through these exercises and get clear on what they mean for you in this moment. Even if you've already started your business or taken a step in a direction, maybe you've decided to jump careers or you've taken a different path from what you were doing before, these questions can help you zero in and get really clear on what your thing is or what you want it to be so that it's easier to move into your next step with confidence, right? That's what we're all looking for. That's what stops us from moving forward is that lack of confidence, and that's what we're helping to build here. And if that next step is starting a business, these questions can help when you're communicating with your customers, with branding and messaging, like on your website or social media, and even discovering new product ideas. And that's why they're so critical. So take the time and work through these questions. So now that we're all on the same page and ready to figure out what our next step is, let's dive into the questions so you can start exploring your thing or what comes next for you. The first question I have for you is, what are you interested in? And I know this seems super simple, and probably you're thinking like, okay, let's talk about like the good stuff. Let's get to the like the making the money or taking the next step. But and you may be surprised at all the ways that you can make money from really any idea when we get there. But for now, we're focused on brainstorming the things that you have an interest in or enjoy doing. Okay, we're going to take a step back because even though it sounds simple, I get it. But when you started thinking that you were ready for something new, how many of you actually took a minute to check in with yourself and think through what you're actually interested in at this moment? Because if we're being honest, we tend to hold standard answers to a question like this, answers that we would say have been true for a while. But if you're ready to do something new, if you're ready to change what you've been doing or try something different, it's likely your honest answer to this question has changed. It's either expanded to include new things, or it's slimmed down to knock some of those things that you're no longer interested in off the list. This may seem a bit counterintuitive to take this inventory of ideas or areas you're interested in, because I think we can agree most people will have quite a few things that they're interested in, and they may even be very unrelated ideas, right? They may seem like way out there or something that you couldn't possibly take a next step in. But this rundown of what you're interested in is a good way to narrow in on your options, and it might even open your eyes to something that you wouldn't have considered an interest. Because when we start thinking about what our next step is, it doesn't have to be toward the thing you're most passionate about. Some things are better left as interests or hobbies, and what you decide to do or try next can be something you're simply good at or just have an interest in. I mean, ideally, you do want to like it, but you don't need to love it because you're more likely to keep doing it and keep going down that path if you're doing something you enjoy or at least have an interest in or are curious about and want to learn more. But the key in this step is not to limit yourself. We're just brainstorming, so anything that you have an interest in can be included on this list, okay? And then we'll come back later to narrow it down. So make sure you work through this, make sure you're honest with yourself, and give yourself some space and time to really think through what you're interested in this moment. All right, now let's talk about the second question to work through when you're thinking about what your next step could be. So the second question I have for you is, what abilities, skills, traits, knowledge are you hoping to bring to the table in this next step? So, No matter what you think your next step might be, this question is a good way to think through what about yourself do you want to give a voice or space to grow in your next chapter. Maybe there are specific personality traits that you want to let guide you through this next phase. Maybe you've let a part of you go dormant and it's time to let it shine through. Maybe there are skills or abilities you want to unleash or are ready to pursue in this next phase. And so the key here is to take some time to really work through all the possibilities that this question could bring up for you as you're pondering your next move. You can literally go in any direction. You could have a really long list here because there are so many ways this question could go. And this is really about exploring the possibilities or the opportunities and to help you get a clearer idea of what parts of you want to move forward with in this next step. It can be exciting and intimidating to have all these possibilities laid out in front of you, but don't let that overwhelm you. Let it be empowering and encouraging because there are literally so many things that any one of us could do or pursue or decide that we want to be our next step. And we should really find a lot of comfort in that instead of discomfort. Let's latch on to the possibilities that arise here. Because when we're looking for that next step or opportunity that speaks to us now in this moment, the best way we can do that is to look at all of the possibilities. Okay, we don't want to overlook something. We don't want to get down the path and realize that it's not for us. I don't want you to go through the same things that I did when I was looking around at everyone else and trying to pursue things that they found to be successful or a good idea. And I don't want you to get there and be like, this isn't me. Not that you can't change if you do, but it is way better to start now and explore all of those possibilities. And then we'll talk about later how to narrow in on what should be your next step. Okay. And that's where this question comes in. So now that we've got that one out of the way, the third question that I have for you when you're ready to start figuring out your next step is, what is the need or desire? Now, this is an externally focused question. So don't get it confused with like your needs or desires, right? The first two questions that we talked about are very internally focused. They're designed to help open your eyes to you and what could make sense for you as a next step. But we do need to, for lack of a better word, marry our interests and abilities with what the outside world is showing us is needed or wanted. That's not to say we're going to try to please everyone or change ourselves to fit the outside world. That's not what we're talking about here. But if you're starting a business, people need to want what you have. Okay. If you're looking to change careers, a position has to be available in the direction that you want to go, right? If you're starting a new relationship, the other person has to be open and receptive, and on it goes. Basically, we're looking for areas or things that show some reciprocity and align with what we're thinking. This is what gives you that extra little kick and clarity because not only do you really want to take this next step, but there's a place for you to take that next step too. That's what we're checking for in this step. We're kind of scanning what's out there, what we could do, what are the possibilities, and this is kind of framing it in a way that makes sense with where other people are, where the market is, and that's what gives us that open space to pursue what's next for us. And that's not to say if you have a totally new idea that no one else is doing or that no one else has pursued, that you can't go down that path. We'll talk about in another session, how you can kind of check your idea and do what's called a little market research to make sure that whatever you're pursuing has, if it's a business, buyers on the other side, right? Because that is the goal. You don't want to create something and there not be anyone there to receive it. And, this isn't the field of dreams. There isn't, if you build it, they will come necessarily that happens. And so this is kind of how we're proactive in that, and that we get that little extra confidence in what is next and that step that we're deciding to take. And so, whatever it is, that you're looking to make your next step, we just want to know that we can carve out our space in that direction. And that's what the third question is designed to kind of help you gauge and make sure is available. And then I do have a bonus question for you because this wouldn't be super fun if there wasn't a bonus question. But the bonus question I have is, how do you want that to look? Okay? That may be a little confusing, so let me explain. This question can sound a little bit odd when you first hear it, but it's such an important way to kind of get parameters around what we want our next step to look like, so that we're confident in the choice that we're making and what we're pursuing. So, if you think about it, how do you want that to look? How do you want your next step to look? So, the first three questions are really around looking at internally at yourself and figuring out what you want, and then making sure that there is space for that in the market, or in that there's some reciprocity out there in the world. And then this last bonus question is the way that we decide how we want to take that next step, because there are so many options for how we can do something, or what we could do next. Even if we have figured out like those other three questions and kind of have an idea of the direction we want to go, there are so many ways we could do it. And answering this question is what's going to give you that ultimate clarity and confidence that you're really after to take that next step. And if you can ask yourself this question and get some real answers, real honest answers, okay? Be very open with yourself and with what you want it to look like. Even if they're basic or kind of general responses right now, it's like, I may want this to look this way. Or, like even with me, when I was starting out, I didn't want to do the one-on-one coaching, right? That was a path that was very clearly laid out in front of me and that most people assumed I was doing, but it wasn't what I wanted. And so I was like, when I took that in, it allowed me to kind of steer into a different direction and be very clear about how I wanted it to look. And that allowed me to take a little bit of a different path, still in the same direction, but build something that more closely resembled what I was really after. Okay. So if you can ask yourself this question, um, you don't have to be super specific. You don't have to be super special with your answers. But if you can just get some ideas of what you want it to look like, it's going to give you that extra boost of confidence as you take your next step. And as you're moving into the next phase, if you're starting a business or making a change or a transition, which we're already kind of filled with some uncertainty when those things start to happen. And this little extra question, this bonus question, is what's going to give you that confidence, because you have a little bit more assurance in the step that you're taking, in the way that you're taking that step, and the direction that you're going. Because, some of us, hopefully most of us at the end of this, will have a pretty good idea of what we want to do next, but we're lacking that sort of courage to make it happen. We struggle when it comes to actually taking the action and seeing it through and getting there ourselves, because we're afraid, or we have these doubts, or we're not sure that we can do it, or, we don't think that we're good enough, or that we have the right, requirements or whatever qualifications. And that's just not the way that we want to set ourselves up as we move into this next phase and this next step. So that's where this last question came up. And it can really help you, if you let it, overcome those fears and doubts, and gives you a little bit more clarity and lets you be a little bit more targeted and strategic in the next steps that you take. So that's what we're striving for with this question. I think it's a really amazing way to just figure out, even broader than the specific next step, what you want kind of as you move into that next step, what you want it to look like and what you're looking for, so that you get what you want out of it. And that makes it easier to overcome any of those doubts or hesitations that may pop up that are just nerves, right? Because you're doing something different. And it's easier to swat those back and move past them because you have that confidence in your decision and that you're taking the next step that's best for you. All right. So that brings us to the conclusion of all the questions, but I do have a little bit more. So moving into like how you make your decision and what you should do next after you work through some of these questions. So as you're getting to the end of this exercise and working through the questions, I do want you to take the time that you need to be comfortable with the decision you make for your next step. But I don't want you to get stuck here. Okay. So once you work through all of these questions and you kind of have your responses, you should start to see where things align. So again, the first two questions are about you. The third question gives you a look externally, right? So you can marry up some reciprocity and make sure that, there's a space for your next step, or you can create some space for your next step. Um, and then the last question helps you narrow in on what you want that to look like, what you're really looking to get out of what your next step or chapter is. And so when you have the answers to all of those questions and you look across those responses, it should start to become clear that there are certain areas or things that you want to pursue next, and that there is a space for, um, and that there's a way in which those fit into your actual vision for what's next for you. And so when you have that and you start to see those parallels and you kind of have a clear idea of what's next for you, make the best decision that you can with what you know now, with the responses that you gathered and the confidence that you have, and just take that next step. You can always, come back and go through this exercise again later and change directions. But for now, make a decision and get ready to take your next step because it's time. And that's really all I have for now. But before you go and get on with your day, I want you to schedule some time to work through these questions right now. Take a minute, put that time on your calendar because we're all about taking the action. And just, for easy access later, if you didn't write them down, I'm going to repeat the questions for you. So get your pencil handy and get ready to jot these down. The first question is, what are you interested in? The second question is, what abilities, skills, traits, knowledge are you hoping to unleash? The third question is, what is the need or desire? And the bonus question was, how do you want that to look? Okay, so take the time to work through them and make a decision about what your next step or next chapter is going to be. Until next time, keep Hey there, friend. We've made it to the end of another Design Your Happiness episode. And if you're loving what you're hearing and you know someone else who would benefit from hearing it too, please share this episode with them. I can't tell you how much it would mean to me to support even more ambitious, aspiring entrepreneurs like yourself. So send them a text or a quick email with the link, and let's help even more people build the lives and businesses they've been dreaming about. All right, I'll see you next time. Until then, keep designing your happiness.